So, welcome to the Joanne Avison podcast. And it's my absolute delight today to introduce Heather Natoli. Hello, Heather. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. How are you?
I'm really good. And I'm really delighted to have you here because I was so fascinated by your story and how it links to fascia. So, go.
Yes, thank you. I'm so beyond excited to be here. I am thrilled by fascia. I feel like it makes me buzz just thinking about it, learning about it. And I began as a homeopath. I've actually always been very curious about the human body since I was a child. I used to want to study neuroscience. I was very curious as a kid. My mother was a nurse and she worked with severely disabled children who, in their presence, I was always wondering, how is this soul connected to this body? When the doctors are saying that there's so much limitation around this, I just feel something so much more than what's being presented to us as, the clinical presentation for these kids. And, I carried that through my life. I went off to school for pre-med and was diverted with the birth of my first child and some of my own health issues that redirected me to some of those children that my mom worked with. They were using a homeopath, Dr. Luke DeShepper. And my mother was like, well, why don't we, just travel down that path and see if that's helpful for you. And that was just an incredibly groundbreaking moment for me, learning how to take back the control of my own health and understand what was actually happening in my system and finding a gentler way to work through it was super profound for me.
I love what you say there, Heather. If I can just ask you something.
Yeah.
One of the keys to working with fascia, in my opinion, is that particularly in movement, which is, I'm a movement and manual
Yeah.
therapist, so it's both. But movement for me, we're very hard on ourselves.
Yes.
And a lot of the movement protocols that we've inherited, particularly in the West, are done with this focus on achievement and goal oriented. And sometimes our work is about pulling people back to the subtle aspect of their structure because it's such a key. And I love that you say what you've just said. What motivated you? I know your story gets very fascinating in a minute, so hang in
Yeah.
there, guys. But first, I want to get this ground in place that
Yes.
I'm so intrigued that you were motivated by the more subtle aspects.
Yes. Yeah. That has always been very, like, I've always spoken in subtleties, right? I understand and process things in that world. Anything too much more feels harsh for my system. So I have always been on this journey of trying to understand and find and meet myself in these ways where I can understand the world through the subtle moments. And homeopathy really at least the principles of it and the understanding of homeopathy and where and how it helps each person express themselves really individually met me in a space that I felt really well held. And so I journeyed off to school for homeopathy and brought my little babies along with me to each course. And it was a beautiful experience. And my biggest takeaway were the principles, right? And kind of living this homeopathic lifestyle. Fast forward to when my oldest was 5, he began having seizures. And our family homeopath was like, oh, do whatever you need to do to help him get stable, right? And go check out this guy who is a fascia bodyworker, because maybe that'll help him release some tension that he might need to just help kind of get him a little more squared away. And it was such a beautiful experience. And when that was my first introduction to fascia, and in my mind, all of the little bells were going off that there are so many similarities between the world of fascia and the subtleties of homeopathy, right? And the energetics of the mind and body and the energy and body. And I just began diving in. I went with it, right? And I ended up years later going back for my massage license so that I could get my hands on as many people as I could to really just be curious and follow that curiosity of what's going on in this system.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I know.
Yes.
As a, I was always like, oh, like, okay, I've got the movement here, but I always questioned the movement because sometimes it was so rigorous. And in
Yes.
yoga, we tend to be so focused on stretching, and of course, as a manual therapist, I deal with injuries from that because when we overstretch connective tissue, it doesn't serve it at all, and we do that very easily in the yoga world. Trust me. And the manual therapy side of things, you really do find you're speaking in a kind of braille, right? That's in the
Yes.
dialect of the person that you're touching. I know you'll recognize that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I took a lot of classes and continuing education courses with other therapists, and we kept coming back to, work on clients together and kind of work in the same world. And everyone kept saying, "But what are you doing? Because you're doing something different." Right?
Mm.
It's not what we just learned. And it took me a very long time to kind of figure out that it was all of this input and understanding of seeing the body and the human experience through a homeopathic understanding, right? That I've been coming at things from a different angle and holding. And I think it's a lot of just the curiosity of, oh, there are different layers to this whole fascial system, right? There's a different experience in each space that, and right, a different texture that's happening, a different subtle pulse that's coming through. And, yeah, that's been a lot of my practice, is really just an exploration. And I tell my clients all the time, like, I'm just learning this with you. Let's dive in together.
I'm learning about you, with you, through you,
Yes.
reflecting you. So
Yes.
tell me what happened with your son.
So my son was having seizures since he was about 5. That's the first time that we recognized he was having seizures. In my past life, when he was young, I was an ophthalmic technician. So I worked helping to get patients ready for an ophthalmologist. So in my training for that, I was learning a lot about the vision, right? Your eyes and how they connect to your body. So
Mm.
the way that he was speaking his experience of these seizures, I kept saying, "Oh, it's vascular." Right. And I kept bringing him to the doctors, and they'd say, "No, no, no, we checked that. It's fine. It's fine." And nearly 8 years later, he had a massive seizure. And we brought him into somebody who said, "Oh, no, mom, you're completely right. The birthmark on his forehead and between his eyes was a vascular tumor, something called an AVM, an arterious vascular malformation. And it was extremely aggressive. It attached to both of his eyes and into his brain space, into that meningeal space, and was creating what they call, I don't remember the name of it. It's called the steal effect. So it steals the blood from those organs, and they go into a seizure or temporary blindness. So when we discovered it, it was very quickly, we had to jump in. We had to jump in, and the doctors had to do everything they could. Unfortunately, the growth had a genetic mutation that made it like a very fast growing cancer. So anytime they would take it out, it would just regrow. So it was probably about a 2-year journey before the doctor said, "We have to come up with a different plan." Right. And their plan was to remove all of the tissue, skin, fascia, muscles, even a lot of the layers of the bone. The surgeon was incredible. He just kept taking tissue and sending it off to the lab to see where the borders of this AVM were. So he worked really hard, and they ended up removing about a grapefruit size diameter of tissue from his head. And when they sent us home, they said, "You you're going to take the bandage off in a few days, and what you will see is we've placed a barrier over the skull. And this is called Integra. This is a film or a sheet of collagen tissue that's going to allow his body to restructure and regrow tissues over it." What they didn't prepare us for was what the look of that would be like, right? It was quite,
I,
terrible
yeah.
to witness. But it was beautiful to see each day that we removed the dressing and changed it, how intelligent the body was, right? It
Mm.
grew across the scaffolding all of the cells that it needed, the muscular tissues, the right, everything was regrowing and across this bridge. And he eventually had that integra, or most of it, removed and replaced with his own skin, as they stretched and reconstructed everything so that it was just the way that he wants it. And now, thankfully, he has been in the clear since his last surgery. But it was a terrifying scenario, right? It was terrible, and I think in some of those moments we find the most profound awarenesses. We understand the human body and the human resilience in a greatly different way.
I'm so moved by this story for so many reasons. One is your motherhood, your devotion, your family, I'm sure, your whole family.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's part of any story like this. And the fact that you've chosen this path to grow and share it with people. And that's what caught my attention in our social media conversation. I was just like, oh my goodness. And what you talk about as well is the patience, because it takes time, right? We call fascia, I say we, I should say John Sharkey, who is a very dear friend and clinical anatomist who I have the great privilege to work with, calls fascia the tissue of temporality, the tissue of time in the
Mm.
body. And we talk about how it tells the story of our lifetime line,
Yes.
and it expresses that journey. And what I'm loving is that you are so clearly explaining very advanced medical understanding of the fascial tissue as not just a scaffolding, as much more than that, as the architecture of the form. And there's very beautiful work and research in the world about providing the architecture for stem cells to grow, which
Yeah.
sounds like was part of your journey. And it is, but what's so profound is the patience and the caring. And I wanted to ask you, would you say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Heather,
Yeah.
but I suspect you're going to agree with me. Would you say that this was body, this was mind, this was being, this was spirit, this was a bit of faith thrown in there, this was patience, awareness, all of
Or
those things?
yes, of course, absolutely. And I
Mhm.
I can definitely say that leading up to, hearing their plan and what they were going to be doing, there was a piece of me that was like, "Oh, you're gonna just take a piece of him and replace it with some random tissue, and then like, who is he? What does that become?" Right? There's all of this questioning of how you're kind of the input that we're putting into a person and what that looks like, and it was really a beautiful process to see the way that it was just him becoming, right, in each and every day. And I was most taken back by these tissues are still working, right? The muscles are moving appropriately in spaces where even the doctors were like, I don't know what's going to happen with this, right? We don't know if that is going to, if the nerves are going to rewire, if things are going to be able to come back enough to make it a functional tissue, but it will do what we need in closing the gap.
Isn't it extraordinary?
Yeah.
I'm blown away. I had the great privilege of working with Jean-Claude Gamberto on several human dissection programs, and he was explaining to me once where he did a surgery whereby he helped replace a very badly injured forearm that had been damaged in an accident, using a graft of latissimus dorsi. And what he was explaining to me were the different timings of the different qualities of tissue. He talked about the different textures. The neural tissue took much longer than the myofascial tissue. But because of the understanding of the fascia being the part of it, the scaffolding, he watched and witnessed the process and knew how to explain it to his patient. And what thrills me is, I mean, this was leading edge surgery, right? This is not standard
Yeah.
procedure by any means.
Right.
But there's the element of how your history came together with your son to do this process with these doctors, this and the mystery of it. There is a quality of mystical awareness going on here. I'm not trying to turn it into woo woo. This is real
Absolutely.
foundational medicine. And this is medicine at its best, right? When all aspects come together to complement each other. and bring the life of a child forward that would otherwise not be able to repair.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I am continually humbled and amazed by everything that I have been through that led me to the moment to be able to walk my own child through a situation like this and make sure that we were getting what we really needed. Because had we stayed with, other doctors who weren't able to be innovative and really listen to the person in front of them and the story that they were offering, we would have had a very different outcome.
Wow. And don't we just thank and bless those visionary medical surgeons for their awareness?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
wow,
Endlessly.
endlessly. Oh my goodness. And your son is thriving.
Yes, he is. He's doing incredibly well.
Just, oh my goodness. I'm so moved. I'm lost for words. Well, I just want to sit here and cry and say thank you
Yeah.
and honor you for your work, because you run the Fascia Clinic.
Yes.
Where are you in the States? Tell us
Yeah.
a bit about that.
So I'm on the Jersey Shore. I'm in Wall, New Jersey. I began the Fascia Clinic. I started working in body work only about 5 years ago. Is when I started in a professional practice. I've been studying fascia since so he's 17 now, since he was 5, right? And I
Yeah.
dove into that world. Um, but the Fascia Clinic, I now have just expanded my space. I teach what I call the feeling fascia method, because in homeopathy, that's the basis of homeopathy, is honoring each person's story and how it describes and explains everything that they're perceiving around them. And so in the feeling fascia course, I'm really trying to help body workers understand where I'm coming from and how to tap into these different layers and the ways that the body is expressing itself and moving from a suppressed state to an expressive state again.
So beautiful. I just love this. And I mean, for me, in this world of protocols where we're all choosing the right protocol, we teach a very profile driven
Yeah.
approach focused in movement. I mean, I teach manual therapy in another completely different context
Yeah.
as part of a neuromuscular therapy course. But what I love in what I'm hearing from you is the bravery and the simplicity and the clarity with which you are honoring this shift in focus from what's wrong and what hurts to what can be released and expressed and freed, because the human nature is so resilient, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a beautiful experience to take somebody who's asking you, right? When people come to a practitioner, a lot of times they're saying, okay, tell me what I can do to help myself, right? Tell me how I'm gonna fix me, or you fix me,
Yeah.
right? Is a lot
Yeah.
of times
Yeah,
the
I'll
thing
give
that
you
we
money.
have.
You sort me out.
Yes.
I've been doing whatever I've been doing in my body for however many decades, but I'm going to pay you a few dollar bills and you're going to transform me. You're like, right, okay.
Yes.
We need your story. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So there's a really cool shift that happens when you can help somebody get to the space where you're like, oh, when you tap in, when you're able to access these parts of your body, you get to be your guide, right? You get to decide what is the best next thing for you and how healing is going to look.
So beautifully said. And it's a physical and it's an imaginal and it's a mental and it's an subconscious, unconscious and a soul process, right? It takes the
Yeah.
whole shtick, spirit and the whole lot, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, I love this. We're singing from the same hymn sheet, Heather. I
Yes.
knew we
Yes.
would be.
Yes, when I first heard you speak on the Fascia Research Society platform, I was like buzzing with excitement because I was like, "Oh, she's speaking my language! I love everything that you are bringing forth. It's so exciting."
Well, it's not as if I designed it. It's just that for me, it's been a profound journey over 30 years through all sorts of ups and downs. But it's not so much about selling my work as waking people up to the enormity of the work that many of us are doing in many different ways. And I do struggle because I think the word fascia and myofascia is not always used wisely. Sometimes it's used as a way of just promoting a field that people demonstrate they don't get.
Yeah.
But what I found so profound about what you're describing is the acceptance and the patience with which you sought an outcome that you believed in so completely you didn't even need to describe it. And there was this open, gracious acceptance of what's possible, like coming from the mystery, coming from the question,
Yeah.
and the willingness to not know, and your surgeon's willingness to not know. I love that. Because the
Yeah.
truth is, we don't. We can't, just because you're paying me money for a session doesn't mean I know the answer to all your problems. It means, are you willing to come in and find out with me? Can we co-create a possibility? And see what happens as part of that. And I think that's part of the shift that we're all in, this expanding into our physical and our emotional and our spiritual awareness. Do you find that in your work at the Fascia Clinic?
Yes, absolutely. I think that is a beautiful way to state it. And um, yeah, I feel like when I'm standing in that state of needing to figure something out, it doesn't feel easy, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the space that I can meet everyone at when they come in and they're like, yeah, no, there just is no figuring this out, right? Because how many times have we come up against a really big moment where nobody knows? The doctors are really telling us we have no idea. And I've seen in the holistic world, right? I have worked with a lot of holistic practitioners and families, and there's so much resistance to kind of bridging these worlds of holistic and medical sciences. And I really try strongly to stand in that faith over fear mindset of let's kind of bridge these two worlds. Let's stand between them and just stay open to possibilities, to how we can use and utilize all of the understanding that people have to create something new, because that's what we need.
Amen, Heather. Oh my goodness. I'm just sitting here. I'm remembering my son was very, very ill a few years ago. It was a very different thing. But it was a visceral issue and it was very confusing and nobody knew what was going on. And he wasn't anyway, he was miles away from me. And it was pure intuition to invite a situation where we could work with someone. And we called in paramedics. And it was when the paramedics took me on one side. It was actually not long after the lockdown in this country. So they refused to take him into hospital. And the paramedics said, he's going into sepsis. They took me on one side to tell me he's going into sepsis. You've got 24 hours or maximum 48 to get him on antibiotics. This was in the middle of the night on a Saturday. And I just stood there and said, I'm not being funny. How am I supposed to conjure antibiotics in the middle of the night? And they
Right.
said, we don't know, but we can't help you. Bless them. I mean, they were
Wow.
heartbroken. You could tell they were heartbroken. They weren't allowed to bring what's supposed to be a young, healthy man with SATs on the floor into a hospital at that time for fear that he would become more ill than he already was.
Of course.
And of course, he was cleared, or he was registered negative at the time, or they wouldn't have even come to see him.
Mhm.
And it was through the intervention of a friend of mine who's a general practitioner who stepped in, provided antibiotics, and through various means we did get him into hospital. And thank God for them, because they discovered a liver abscess that nobody could have worked out. And it was through the most exquisite and appropriate medical intervention from a doctor who absolutely knew how to tap for lung congestion, how to feel for liver blockage, how to understand visceral issues with her hands as a GP, or what you would call an MD in America.
Yeah.
And they got him in time to drain an exceptional an abscess that just shouldn't have been there. They couldn't work it out. The doctor said to me, "This is just spectacular. We've never seen anything like this." And we can't find a case study that matches it, because he's not doing what you need to do to get this particular kind of bacteria. And it's just incredible. Unfortunately, he's so fit and strong and healthy that he recovered after 6 weeks of intravenous antibiotics. And it was a pretty heavy duty process. But again, the coming together of the fields that allowed him to be so strong and so taken care of, and yet the medicine was able to be infused at the right time. Again, it was this fabulous crossover of
Yeah.
fields. And if we're going to wave a flag for anything, I think it's the true complementary. I don't like the term alternative medicine.
Yeah.
It's not an alternative. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It depends on who you are. For a vegetarian, a meal, if they're starving, of meat is not an alternative. It's not a
Yeah.
complement. It's just, to them, it might be poison. And the other way round.
Right.
What we're looking for is how can we complement who you are, how you are, what works for your body through the understanding of medicine, of movement, of manual therapy, of homeopathy, of whatever, educated guesses, prayers.
Yes.
Let's use it all and combine to get the results. And
Absolutely.
we're all working in the healing arts. And whether we do that as a surgeon or a medical student, we're all on the same page as the homeopath, the manual therapist, the movement teacher. I think that that's
Yeah.
where our hearts are.
Yes, of course. We're all looking to help one another.
Well, we begin and end this conversation connected about the tissue of connectivity. I'm just so thrilled to have met you, Heather, and thank you so much for
Likewise.
coming on and sharing your beautiful story. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Joanne.
It really is a pleasure. And details of how you can contact Heather will be in the show notes. And don't forget to press subscribe. Please share with us in the comments any exceptional experiences you have had that resonate or perhaps come up for you when you listen to Heather speaking so eloquently about how so many different branches of medicine can come together in a healing and optimal way for those we love and care about. Thank you so much for listening. Take care and God bless.